Speaking of things that are worth a watch, and something that is slightly less original,
Yes.
Belle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny what Bing image search brings me when I go to look for these movie posters. I don't think we've had one from Germany before like this.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah. But yeah, so this is a anime movie. Came out about what 2016, I think. So,
2021, released in the States in 2022.
oh, 20. Okay, okay, so it's newer than I thought. Um, yeah, basically fits into what we were talking a couple of days, or we were talking uh, as we were watching the movie that kind of fits into this like subgenre of anime of uh, what was it, depressed teenage girl.
Depressed teenage girl comes across supernatural thing.
Right.
Uh, this is like you're weathering into you. Although technically the guy was the point of view character in that one, but the girl was still the unusual depressed one.
Yes,
Uh,
and yeah,
Suzume, Your
your name.
Name,
Yeah,
The Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
yeah, um, yeah. So the movie follows Suzu, and she's Japanese teenage girl living in a little town. Uh, she's got the tragic backstory with her mom dying. Uh, her mom died rescuing a little girl who was trapped in a flooding river. Um,
Right.
and
Little girl got back, mom didn't.
Yeah, and she has a basically non-existent relationship with her father. And all the while, there's this virtual reality world where everybody goes to called U, just the letter U. Um, and the way it works is that when you set up your account with it, it like uses a picture of you, and then it creates an avatar from your the way you look. If I'm if
I,
I'm
I I think it also has like something where it can measure your vitals to figure out your best representation.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when Suzu does it, it turns into the avatar on the right, and of course she thinks it's a mistake because she uses a class photo with another girl that's in the photo who's really pretty, and she thought it was that uh, the AI didn't do it right, but then she looked at the avatar and it had freckles, and she has freckles.
Right. And before we get into what she does in there, one of the key thing is that her thing with her mom was music.
Mhm.
They were always she was learning to play the piano on this phone app. They had a keyboard. She was writing music all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, and after her mom died, it's the point where she was like, it's interesting because she's in choir, but she just hides under the table. Just so much anxiety.
Mhm.
She's by herself at one point and tries to sing and vomits out of stress.
Yeah.
So they definitely do a good job of making you feel for this poor character.
Yeah. And then yeah, then of course as soon as she gets into you, that's she starts singing, and then she has this beautiful singing voice, uh, and of course a lot of people think, oh, she's just showing off, but then reality, like, no, a lot of people actually really like her, even though they like her better than this other girl who's a singer in you.
Right?
Um,
She basically completely shoves aside the old hotness.
right. And she starts going by Belle. At first with no E, but then she later adds the E, I think.
Right? Because her name literally means bell in Japanese, is in ringing a bell.
Mhm.
So that's the reference to her name. But everyone adds the E because oh, she's beautiful, so it must mean French for beauty.
Yes. And so Belle, when Suzu as Belle, she's doing a concert, and then this guy shows up, and they call him the Beast, and he looks and if you're thinking, oh, is this Beauty and the Beast?
It absolutely is.
Yes.
1 second. Let's get an image of this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, one of the things they notice is that he has bruises on his back.
right. Which is weird because it's like, well, why is the biometric thing giving him bruises on his back?
Yeah.
So he isn't exactly a copy of the Beast, but like definitely reminiscent of it. It's like the Beast combined with an Eastern dragon.
Yeah. And so the basically the whole time Belle's trying to find out who the Beast is. She gets clues, and then she eventually finds where his little hideout is, and it just so happens to be in a castle. And the Beast has all of these uh, AI companions. And then the entire time I'm thinking, why didn't Disney sue them?
Yeah, like they were literally doing. I was like, okay, this seems somewhat similar. And then they have a scene where they're dancing together, and they do the same camera pan in the nearly identical ballroom
Yeah,
as the dancing scene from Beauty and the Beast.
yeah. It's like, oh wow. uh,
And so you kind of you have a few things going on here. Belle, or excuse me, Belle, Suzu trying to come out of her shell. She only feels like herself in you.
yeah,
Trying to figure out who the Beast is, and uh, and just some other school shenanigans.
right. Yeah, and yeah, there's and of course there's a boy at her school who's like he's the childhood friend, and he's
Right.
really popular. Yeah, and yeah.
It's like, okay, so he's the obvious candidate.
Hmm.
Although that would be a really stupid coincidence that two of the best known people in you went to the same school together. But so many anime are built on stupid coincidence that it wouldn't be too surprising.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's so that's the basic premise. Let's
Mhm.
spend a minute here to talk about some of the production.
Yeah.
So interesting thing. You notice how Belle there looks a lot like a Disney princess? That's because they literally hired one of the Korean animators who had worked on movies like Moana to come in and design the avatar. uh, so the real world is done in 2D anime style. This was actually directed by, and I left the page, so one moment.
Oh,
Uh,
wasn't it the same guy that did The Girl Who Left Through Time?
yep, Girl Who Lived Through Time, and also very in keeping with the themes of this movie, exploring parallel worlds or parallel digital worlds. He also did the good part of the Digimon movie slash uh, Sakura Wars, which was basically him getting to do his own version of that years later.
Yeah.
Uh, which I immediately said to myself as I'm watching this movie, the way these characters like the you can it's funny how just little things like the line like the characters here are very thin lines
Hmm.
when they're in 2D, and like there's just a particular way that he draws mouths that I immediately recognized and said, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my suspicion was correct. Director's name is Mamoru Hosoda. He
Hosoda.
also wrote this movie. He's basically one of those auteur types who gets to make whatever he wants.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, his
see,
name's actually on the poster.
yes. Well, I did the hard way and looked it up on
Yeah.
IMDb. Huh.
Yeah.
He also apparently directed one of the earlier One Piece movies from 2005, and he
Mhm.
was on Samurai Champloo, which, now that I think about it, that kind of makes sense. So, hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Guy's got a storied career.
Yeah.
I think he's at the point of his career where he gets to make whatever the heck he wants. And in this case, he wanted to make his own little loving tribute to Beauty and the Beast, which is why I have all the visual references.
Yes. Yeah. And and Ninjas asks, please, that is normal form is the guy from Beastly. What's Beastly? Is that
Beastly. I don't know what that is.
uh,
Sorry.
yeah, I don't know either. but yeah, it's a very, yeah, it had I think an issue that you had was, by the way, I do like the contrasting animation styles between the two worlds, because I'm not the biggest fan of CGI anime, but I think it works well here because it's a virtual reality world, so it's meant to kind of have that uncanny valley look to it.
Right, if I was going to compare the CGI anime to other recent movies that have done that, this isn't as good as Dragon Ball Super Superhero, where the whole thing was in CGI and it wasn't too noticeable aside from anime profiles still look kind of weird when they're done in full 3D.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I would say that in this one, it works pretty well. Especially, yeah, like you said, you have the extra layer of abstraction that it's supposed to be a virtual world with avatars, so things should look slightly uncanny.
Yeah. Oh, Ninja says it's an old movie. It's Beauty and the Beast, but it's like Twilight. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but so yeah, from an animation perspective, everything works very well.
Yeah.
Uh, the other thing is that, dang, the music in this movie is pretty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
This is a full-on musical.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. 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 Especially all the songs that Suzu sings as Belle. Yeah. Like.
Yeah, it kind of fails the hum test where I can't hum or whistle them later, but dang, I just uh, so on behind the voice actors, she is listed as Kylie McNeil, who has no other roles listed. That's got to be a pseudonym.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But whoever she is, not only did she do a wonderful job with all of the songs, which is just like very resonant, a very emotional voice. She also did a good job of portraying Suzu as, she just came off as awkward and sad.
Hmm. Yeah. Um. Although I think although to a negative, I think that you were pointing out was just the how the virtual reality world really didn't make sense.
No, let's thank you for bringing that up because we're done with the positives of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the okay, so I also saw this in the Sword Art Online Gun Gale arc where some anime seem to want to do this idea where, oh, of course people would go into this alternate world where you can't design your own avatar.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you get to be a Disney princess, that's a good match for Suzu there. But like, the Beast didn't get to decide his avatar. Uh,
Yeah.
an older woman that they meet who lies about herself online is a baby in the alternate universe.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people who, in one scene, I noticed that there were three things that looked like a hand with a face drawn on it, and it's like, okay, first off, uh, I would just quit right there if I got into this VR world and that was my avatar assigned by the game that I couldn't do. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's unique. People just know me as the hand with the face, and there were two others that looked almost identical to them in that scene. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
come on. So they definitely just did a lot of weird for the sake of weird with the avatars.
Yeah.
But of course, I was starting to think like, okay, so it seemed like they were able to dive in on their phones. Is that right? Or did they just have the messenger function on their phones?
Well, yeah, they had the phones, and they had like earbuds that they put in.
Right. Like Time Bandits had impossible technologies from the not too distant future. Earbuds that just let you full dive into a VR world seem a little bit 23rd century to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing too, there's another character we forgot to mention was Suzu's friend, who's like
Oh,
kind of,
Hiroka,
yeah, yeah, she's like her kind of like her quasi manager.
right? Because Belle gets a nice little singing career in this other world.
Yeah. Um and she has this like whole setup of all these monitors everywhere, um, and she was a fun character because she was kind of like, you could tell she was like the friend that's like trying to get the other friend to like, hey, come on,
Right.
snap out of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Stop being depressed about your mom. Boo hoo hoo. We all have problems, crybaby.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, she's always there, like with the funny things. Like she pretends to be an adult interviewing people for a magazine when she's trying to figure things out about the beast.
yeah,
Um, and it works out perfectly. And just a bunch of other little fun things.
yeah,
So, and then of course, me being the guy who knows that most websites and apps are unsustainable. Things like, Uber's never really made a profit.
mm,
DoorDash is a money pit, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it's hard enough to make money for AAA games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
yeah,
Imagine, they also say early on that the app has 5 billion users and growing. Now, this more or less appears to be taking place in the modern day, aside from the full dive earbuds.
yeah.
And my mind goes to, are there 5 billion in the world, or people in the world who have access to smartphones?
No,
I It might be close to that. I don't know how many people don't have electricity,
yeah.
but
Well, yeah. 5 billion. I mean, that's more than half the population of the planet.
yeah. So like, I think at the very least, if you had 5 billion users, you would be at capacity or very close to it.
Yeah,
And then I think to myself, okay, on top of that, you're having to simulate a persistent 3D world that people can just fly through. And it seems like they can just spontaneously generate things like music, enormous whales with speakers built into them.
yeah.
Like that's got to be a heck of a tax on the servers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Ninja says it's everyone in the developed world. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah, right. It's exactly like you might be getting some penetration into parts of Africa or whatnot, but you're not getting y- you're not getting many more people.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and yeah, I can imagine what how many servers that would take to run
Right.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
realistically, she should be hitting load screens all the time whenever
yeah,
somebody's in area.
yeah,
Now, I'm going to be fair here and just say that these are thoughts that occur to me because I know too much about the subject. It's like a physicist watching Star Wars and getting upset.
yeah,
Because it's a very pretty world. It's just like you can't think too hard about some of the aspects of it.
yeah, yeah,
Now, we kind of are getting to the zone of spoilers, and
yeah,
I think this movie is good enough to give a watch. It's also on Max,
yeah.
although what I will say is I considered switching from the English to the Japanese cast just to see what it was like, and they did the stupid old thing where the two versions of the movies aren't like you can't switch language tracks. They're
Okay,
actually on the service as
two
different
separate.
movies.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
So, which one did you watch it in?
I watched the English. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. So, can't comment on the Japanese. English dub was mostly good. Suzu's voice actress slash singer Kylie McNeil being a high point.
yeah,
There were some people in the supporting cast who weren't quite as good. Like, I thought that the guy who was the kayaker, his voice was too high for how big and buff he was, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah,
But overall, I would say that this is kind of one where you have to turn your brain off a bit for reasons we're going to get into in the spoiler section.
yes, yeah,
Just appreciate it as a pretty experience, and you will love it. And I think there's a lot to like, even if you start nitpicking it like we have been.
yeah,
Because like, okay, Ben, is it their fault if they didn't work out the math for their super advanced thing? Well, no, because now should they have maybe said some lower numbers? I think that now if they'd said 1 billion, That would
Yeah.
have been much easier for me to swallow.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
If they had, I don't know if they ever said a year this took place, but everything else seems to be normal, like everyday modern Japan, except for this full dive earbud experience.
Yeah.
So it's if they had said 2040, I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, not too distant future, or like, sort of like the Marvel movies where it's supposed to be modern day, but there's like advanced stuff that doesn't fit in the
Right.
real world.
But just from a basics perspective, worthwhile movie. I think it's time to get into spoilers.
Yes.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Daniel, does this movie seem a little bit too clean in its ending?
Yes.
Yeah. So the mystery of who the beast is, it is not the childhood friend that you think it is, or at
No.
least that I should say. My trope sense was tingling with him. My trope sense was wrong.
Yeah.
It turned out that the beast is a different character who we didn't actually meet, but we got like a little glimpse of him in an online snippet where he was talking about how the beast was his hero,
Yeah.
and that was his younger brother, the
Hmm.
beast's younger brother, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very very sad, tragic story. Yeah, the Beast is, I'd say probably about maybe a year or two younger than Suzu.
Hmm.
He's You find out that his mom died. They don't really say how the mom died, but we could probably guess. Um, the
Oh, I hadn't even thought about it being the dad's fault, but
Yeah.
I can't discount that.
Yeah. Yeah, because the dad is horribly abusive to the 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 kid who's the Beast, and his younger brother.
Right.
Uh,
And
yeah.
the beast's whole thing is that he tries to protect the brother, and that's why in you he is this bruised being who is a hideous monster.
Right. Yeah. And so they at the end of the movie, they basically do, Suzu and her friends, everybody, they find out who he is, and they want to help him, but he's like, oh, I've heard that before, you're not gonna
Right.
do anything.
Right. He refuses to say where he is.
Yeah. And they finally are about to get it out of him, but then the dad shows up and stops them and turns the stream off.
Right. And I don't know how that website actually worked. I don't know if it was like a chat roulette type thing. There, it's kind of convenient how they're able to find the little brother in a live stream, and
Yeah.
then they're able to like the only app I can think of that I've used like that is StreamYard, like where you could be streaming and I could try to get in on the call,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't be viewing it through StreamYard. You'd be viewing it through YouTube or Twitch or whatnot,
Right.
which
Yeah.
does not have two-way conversations.
Yeah.
At least not the way it was being portrayed there.
Yeah. It was, yeah, very odd. Yeah.
And that was another one of those where this, I get that it's a convenience for the story, but like it didn't feel real.
Yeah. Yeah. And how they figure out where the kid is kind of iffy, because what they did was they kind of do the whole, you know, Blade Runner enhance image, and they
Right.
looked out the window and they saw a building.
You know what's so that's actually a little bit of realism. Do you remember the whole thing with Shia LaBeouf and "He Will Not Divide Us,"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
where he
Oh
had
yeah.
his slide that said "We will not divide us,"
Yeah.
and the people in 4chan, no matter where he put it, their combined weaponized autism allowed them to figure out where he was in the world. Like they were like because it was like live streaming a flag in a field. Well, they were able to look at star charts and figure out, oh, an airplane flew over. What planes are flying in that general area that we've narrowed it down to? And
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
what's the
remember.
length of the shadows at this time of day? And they kept finding it. They even found it when he put the flag in a, I think it was inside of a log cabin in a museum in Sweden. And they were able
Oh
to
yeah.
figure it out from
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right.
so it's
Yeah.
like it's one of those things that seems iffy, and the whole enhanced image thing is a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but just like that actually is it's one of those things that seems like it like fake, but it could actually happen that
Er,
way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a little bit fast the way they did it, but
But yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So they figure out where he is, and then Zuzu gets on a train by herself. Why?
yeah, okay. So my attention had wandered for a moment there, and I was hoping that you would know why she went by herself, but she had four friends her own age there, plus a
Yeah.
group of adult women who she was in the choir with.
Yeah. And yeah. No. No. It never got explained why she went by herself. At least take your guy friends with you.
Yeah, right. Take the guy with the kayak paddle. That can be a weapon.
Yeah.
And so she ends up finding the two guys, and she just stands up to the dad and the fact that he claws her a scratch on her face,
Yeah.
and he backs down because she's standing up to him.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, and I think the dialogue even says something along these lines, everything's good. She has gotten over her issues in one cathartic moment.
Yeah.
She can talk normally to her friends again, and her childhood friend who has just been treating her like a burden to protect, like, oh, I missed you so much. It's great to have you back.
Yeah, yeah, and she repairs her relationship with her dad, and
Like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It all gets wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily mind that it was wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow. They just didn't quite earn the nice, neat little bow,
Mm, yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah. It felt rushed to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe this is a George Lucas problem where no one could tell Mamoru no,
yeah, maybe, yeah,
or like make serious suggestions, or it could be that this is more meant as. Here's the thing: if it wasn't childhood abuse or something like that, I think I'd be more forgiving of the ending being kind of easy.
yeah.
Or if they hadn't done such a good job of showing the pit that Susie was climbing her way out of, because we kind of brushed over this, but
Oh yeah,
as she was gaining confidence being Belle in this alternate universe, she was able to do things like join the community choir and sing again
yeah,
and start opening up to other people.
yeah. And the community choir that she's in, her mom was in that group. We find out at the yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
So yeah, so uh, but it's like she went from, I don't know, jogging to running a marathon in terms of emotional development.
yeah, yeah.
And I also kept thinking, man, so this guy is willing to punch his own kids, but a little girl who gets in his way, no, that's too far. That's
Yeah, yeah,
like I kept thinking, man, if he is like at least twice her weight and
yeah.
like a foot taller than her, if he didn't back down because she stood up to him, she would be kind of boned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that part of it really didn't make much sense to me. I guess it was just they're just showing that, like, well, in his heart, in deep down in his heart, he's a coward, and
Right. So he takes that on his kids.
yeah,
So yeah, and it's kind of from the movies I've seen from this guy, I feel like they all kind of are similarly like they're always beautiful,
mhm,
always have a really neat premise. I don't I've it's been 10 years since I watched The Girl Who Left Through Time, but I remember that one feeling like it had a slightly unsatisfying ending too.
mm.
I'd have to go back and rewatch to remind myself why I came away with that opinion.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet. I think that's on Crunchyroll. It might be in my list.
Probably.
Yeah,
But yeah, so what I would say here is that this is a movie that doesn't reward thinking, and I don't know how well it would reward a second viewing,
yeah,
maybe in a few years. But
yeah.
like I'll say, the movie wasn't like antagonistic towards the audience. It didn't make you feel stupid for caring about things.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
It's just that it didn't quite stick the landing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well,
I guess that's kind of actually that's kind of the through line for the things we watched together, is
yeah.
that it's like, Time Bandits was, you didn't like the third act of Time Bandits as much as I did, and
Yeah.
I kind of felt like the South Park episode had kind of the ending was kind of weak because it relied too much on the reference, and
Yeah. 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 I didn't realize. Yeah. Hadn't realized. Yeah. They all three of our reviews would would have the same same thing going with it. Yeah.
we keep coming into things with our unintentional similarities, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I feel weird saying this because I usually make a point of saying, "Oh, it can't just look pretty and sound pretty." It gets a it gets a little bit of a buy for being a musical. Just dang, if you weren't going to actually address these deeper issues, you should have gone with a simpler mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I can also see why this was the number 3 movie in Japan that year, and
Yeah.
it got a 14-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival,
Wow. Hmm.
because it is a technical and musical accomplishment.
Yes, it is. Yeah.